Imagine a world where artistry breathes life into wood and fabric, a delicate dance of strings and imagination, transforming inert objects into vibrant characters. For centuries, the puppet show enchanted, a spectacle of innocent wonder, weaving tales of heroes and villains, of love and laughter, all beneath the gentle guidance of a master's hand. It was a craft revered, a storytelling tradition passed down through generations, each puppet a vessel for human emotion, each performance a fleeting moment of pure, unadulterated escapism. The creak of the wooden joints, the rustle of tiny costumes, the hushed gasps of the audience. These were the symphonies of a bygone era, a time when the illusion held sway, a time when the distinction between animate and inanimate was absolute, a comforting certainty in a world full of unknowns. But what if that certainty began to fray? Enter Elias Thorne, known only as the Puppet Master. His reputation preceded him, a shadowy figure whose performances were less about whimsical escapades and more about psychological delves. His puppets were not merely carved wood. They were said to possess a chilling lifelike quality, their painted eyes seeming to follow you, their articulated limbs moving with an uncanny fluidity that defied the simple physics of strings. Thorne himself was reclusive, a gaunt man with eyes that held the weight of untold stories, or perhaps unspeakable secrets. He spoke little, letting his creations do all the talking, their voices somehow echoing his own haunted intonations. Spectators often left his shows not with joy, but with a profound sense of unease, a lingering question mark etched into their minds about what they had truly witnessed.
Elias Thorne's final engagement was announced cryptically, merely as the Puppet Master's last show. No location, no date initially, just whispers carried on the wind, a chilling premonition that something profound and perhaps terrible was about to unfold. Many speculated on its meaning. Was he retiring? Or was this a performance of a different, more permanent kind? The comparison to his previous works was stark. Where before there was a macabre allure, now there was an undeniable undercurrent of dread. Tickets, when they finally surfaced for a forgotten, dilapidated theater on the city's fringe, were scarce and expensive, sought after by those drawn to the morbid and the mysterious, those who craved a final encounter with the man whose art blurred the line between inanimate object and living terror. The theater itself was a character in this final act. Decades of dust, the lingering scent of forgotten perfumes and decay, created an atmosphere thick with history and foreboding. The once opulent velvet seats were torn, the gold leaf peeling from the proscenium arch like a dying skin. It was a mausoleum of forgotten dreams, a perfect canvas for Thorne's final, chilling masterpiece. This was not a venue designed for laughter, but for contemplation, for the unsettling stillness that precedes a reveal. The air itself felt heavy, charged with an unseen energy, as if the very walls had absorbed the countless emotions of past audiences, now awaiting one last, unforgettable imprint. The stage, though empty, seemed to pulse with a dormant energy, waiting for its cue to awaken.
The night arrived, cloaked in an unnatural silence. The few who gathered were an eclectic mix: art critics, occult enthusiasts, and the morbidly curious. No vibrant chatter, no excited anticipation, just a shared, apprehensive hush. The comparison between this audience and those of Thorne's earlier, more conventional shows was stark. Back then, there was a sense of awe. Now, it was replaced by a palpable tension, a shared breath held in anticipation of something more. The air grew colder as the theater lights dimmed, plunging the hall into near total darkness, save for a single piercing spotlight on the stage. The murmurs ceased entirely, replaced by the thumping of hearts, each beat a slow drum roll leading to the unknown. The curtain rose, not with a flourish, but with a slow, agonizing creak, revealing a tableau that froze the blood. Not the usual vibrant set, but a grim, minimalistic stage dominated by a single ornate, life-sized puppet, its expression caught in a rictus of silent agony. It was not one of Thorne's familiar figures. This was new, deeply unsettling. The conventional comparison to a typical puppet show dissolved instantly. This was an unveiling, not a performance. And then there was Thorne himself, standing beside it, or perhaps behind it, his gaunt frame barely discernible in the dim light, his presence more a shadow than a man. The sheer immobility of the scene, the unnerving silence, held everyone captive. The show began without a single word from Thorne. Instead, a low, guttural humming filled the air, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very floorboards, growing in intensity. Slowly, agonizingly, the puppet stirred. A finger twitched, then an arm lifted, its movements jerky, yet disturbingly fluid, unlike anything a mere string could achieve. The comparison to Thorne's earlier puppets was damning. Those had been masterful illusions, but this felt intrinsically alive. The audience shifted uncomfortably, a collective ripple of disbelief and dawning horror. Was this a new, horrifyingly advanced mechanism, or was something far more ancient, far more sinister at play within the wooden frame, pulling strings Thorne himself no longer controlled?
As the puppet's movements grew more elaborate, more human-like, a horrifying realization began to dawn. The strings, they were still there, taut, invisible, but they weren't leading to Thorne's hands. They seemed to vanish upwards, into the murky darkness above the stage, beyond the reach of any visible mechanism. And Thorne himself, he was no longer a master, but a silent observer, his eyes wide with a terror that mirrored the audience's own. The comparison between his previous commanding presence and this terrified passivity was chilling. He was not pulling the strings. He was merely present, a witness to a performance he no longer directed, perhaps never truly had.
The show escalated into a macabre ballet. The puppet began to articulate, not with a script Thorn had ever known. They were ancient, primal. This was no longer entertainment. It was a confession, a summoning, a terrifying revelation. The illusion of control, once Thorn's greatest triumph, had completely dissolved. Now the comparison was between the living and the not living, and the lines were terrifyingly blurred. The puppet moved with an unnatural grace, a predator stalking its prey, the very air thick with a silent scream.
And then the puppet turned its attention fully to Thorn. Its glassy eyes, once vacant, now burned with a malevolent intelligence. It advanced, step by slow, deliberate step, its wooden joints creaking like ancient bones. Thorn, once the orchestrator, was now the orchestrated. He stumbled backward, a guttural cry trapped in his throat, his face a mask of abject terror. The comparison of predator and prey had flipped. The puppet, once his creation, now held him in its thrall, a horrifying reversal of roles. It was as if every ounce of life Thorn had poured into his creations, every dark thought and whispered secret, had finally coalesced into a singular, vengeful entity.
What followed was a spectacle of unimaginable horror. The puppet seized Thorn, not roughly, but with an unnerving, tender precision, pulling him closer. The audience could only watch, paralyzed by fear, as the puppet master, who had once given life to the inanimate, was now having his own life taken. There was no struggle, no defiance, only a chilling acceptance in Thorn's eyes, as if he had always known this was his inevitable curtain call. The comparison was now complete, the creator becoming the creation, the strings of destiny finally revealed, tying the master to his final, most terrifying performance. The silence in the theater was absolute, broken only by the puppet's soft, rhythmic movements.
The ultimate act concluded not with a bang, but with a chilling, drawn-out whisper from the puppet itself, a final, guttural sound that resonated with ancient power. Thorn's form slumped, lifeless, in the puppet's embrace. The strings, once tethered to his creations, now seemed to entwine him, making him part of the stage, another silent actor in a play he could no longer escape. The comparison to death and transformation was stark. He had become one with his art, or rather, his art had consumed him. The stage lights flickered, then died, plunging the theater into absolute darkness, leaving the audience alone with the lingering echoes of what they had witnessed. A performance beyond the realms of human comprehension.
When the house lights hesitantly flickered back on, the stage was empty. No Thorn, no puppet, no traces of the horrific tableau. Only the tattered velvet curtains, once again drawn, hiding whatever horrors lay behind. Yet the air was different, heavier, impregnated with an indelible stain of fear. The audience, slowly emerging from their frozen state, carried with them not just a memory, but a wound, a chilling comparison between what they thought they knew about reality and the profound, terrifying truth revealed. The stage remained empty, but the feeling of being watched, of something lurking just beyond the visible, was palpable. A silence fell over the city that night, a silence born of unspoken terror. The legacy of Elias Thorne, the puppet master, and his last show lives on, not in grand narratives, but in hushed whispers and unsettling dreams. It serves as a chilling comparison between the power of creation and the perils of obsession. Was it a masterful illusion, a psychological spectacle pushed to its terrifying limits? Or did Thorne, in his relentless pursuit of the lifelike, awaken something ancient, something that transcended the strings and wood, transforming him from master to marionette in his own grand finale? The answer remains elusive, hidden within the shadows of that forgotten theater, a spectral performance playing on, eternally, in the dark corners of our minds. What we witnessed was a warning, and sometimes the show truly never ends.